Hello, thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I received a great question from a listener to the podcast a while back. I want to say it was at least 300 years ago, Ryan, I think it was. On veganism, he says he'd love me to hear my opinion on a healthy Christian perspective on veganism, and a good way to approach someone who says that meat eating is not only unhealthy, but immoral and unethical. Well, I've thought about this a good bit, and I don't have the definitive answer, but you ask my opinion, I'll be happy to give it. And I'm sure there's all kinds of literature on this topic. I mean, I know that for a fact because these are the kind of things that are brought up in ethics textbooks and sometimes even bioethics textbooks. So people can study this, and you know, again, there's so much out there that you can listen to and whatnot. But for my quick take on this short podcast, a long time ago when I was thought about this issue and people brought it up, my first thought was that this was silly. And I'm sorry about that because some people take this very seriously. I'm just telling you the truth, and I'm sorry. I in my youth, that was the case. This seemed like a dumb question. But honestly, I don't think it's a dumb question, and I take it seriously now. And the reason why I take it seriously is because how Christians interact or treat others in the world matters, and we should take it seriously. So therefore, I think it's a serious question to ask, what's a Christian response to tree hugging or environmentalism or the fish or the dolphins? I think those are serious questions. I think how we interact with the world matters, and I think we ought to have a Christian perspective on it. And that's it. So if you listen to my podcast often, you know, typically when I ask these kind of questions, the should or should not questions, I always say several things and just say these. Again, one is, of course, I don't have the definitive answer, but I think I do know the person who had the definitive answer on everything that matters in life, that of course is Jesus. If Jesus didn't talk about it, then I go to the early church. If the early church didn't talk about it, and I mean the primitive church, the church represented in the first century of the New Testament, if they don't have anything about it, then the early church later on, what we call late antiquity, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th century church, around the time of the creeds. If there's nothing at all whatsoever, then I try to bring up biblical principles that seem to apply to that situation. So I start with Jesus. I'll always start with Jesus. So one of the reasons why I used to think this was silly is because of this first issue. But again, I don't think it's silly. I don't think I'm not trying to knock it. I really am not. So put simply, if someone says, is something is sinful, or it is or is not something, the first thing I think of, did Jesus talk about it or did he do something? So the very first thing I ask myself in this kind of question is, did Jesus eat meat? Was Jesus a vegan? The answer is no. Did Jesus eat meat? Yes. So therefore, veganism cannot be inherently sinful. It can be. It cannot be. I mean, it can't. Veganism can't be inherently righteous either. So there can't be something inherently good about it. Carnivores cannot be inherently sinful people. Jesus ate fish. Jesus and his disciples would have plucked the grain off of things. I mean, it says this in Mark's gospel. I mean, he would have ripped fruit from the tree vine. Well, as soon as you take the fruit off of a vine, it's dead. And they went fishing, Peter and Jesus. I mean, it says this specifically. I mean, they ate fish, multiplied fish in the bread. But when they went fishing, they would have taken fish out of their habitat. They were alive and breathing under the water. Take them out, the fish die, and they cook them. They had a fish fry. So there's no way veganism inherently can be righteous, or eating meat can be inherently sinful, because Jesus himself ate meat. And so to me, frankly, that's the end of the subject. So when someone says to me, what's your Christian perspective on veganism, I say what I just said. I would say, well, first I want to say inherently eating meat cannot be immoral. It cannot be sinful, because I'm a Christian. The Christian worldview, for various reasons, I'm convinced Christianity is true, and I think Jesus told the truth, and what he did was right. Jesus ate meat. Period. It's the same thing when it comes to alcohol. I don't drink. I never drank in my entire life. That doesn't make me super special, I guess, but I mean, it's rare, and that sense kind of weird. But drinking wine, drinking alcohol inherently cannot be sinful, because Jesus drank wine. Now, from some documents, it seems that we can tell, at least later on, that wine was diluted about 4 to 5 parts to 1. So it was mostly very diluted wine. But nevertheless, there was alcohol in it, and it to some degree help purify the water, but nevertheless it was wine. So you can't say drinking wine is inherently sinful if Jesus did it. On that issue, what comes into play, and this is all through the New Testament, is having self-control. I mean, it explicitly says don't get drunk with wine. It's kind of like this with eating meat. Jesus ate meat, so it cannot be inherently bad to eat meat. The issue is, well then, is an issue of self-control? Well, sure. And that's the issue, we shouldn't overeat. We shouldn't be addicted to it. One other argument I hear about eating meat is how animals are treated. So what about how animals are treated? Well, again, I go back to Jesus, which I already said a little bit, but Jesus and disciples took living fish and watched them suffer as they grasped for air and then died and then cooked and ate them. So, I mean, that's what they did. It doesn't mean Jesus and disciples took out fish to torture them or they enjoyed the fish dying. There's no evidence of that, and that just sounds silly. If I eat fish now or when I've gone fishing and we eat, I went straight to fishing. I dropped the G, fishing, when I said fishing because I'm from the South. That's how ingrained that is to me. And I haven't fished in years, and I still said when I went fishing, and my daughter's laughing at me right now. It's amazing. When I went fishing, unbelievable. Next, I'm going to say I'm fixing to go fishing, because in the South you say I'm fixing. That means I'm about to go do something. You say I can't believe it. You can take the man out of the South, but you can't take the South out of the man. Okay, so I've never seen any hunter ever take a fish out. Well, I haven't seen people take out fish and go, oh, I'm so glad. This is the best part. Watch the fish suffer. But they did. They do. They die. And we caused it. Well, that's what Jesus and disciples did. On purpose to eat food. What about texts? And I'm not to mention texts my next major point, which is when I think about biblical concepts about eating food, you also have this basic Jewish Christian view that humans reign over all animals. They reign over all of them. I mean, in Genesis, it says explicitly after the flood that now you can go eat meat. It says that explicitly. Now, we are supposed to take care of animals, but also to use them as we wish. I mean, that's the deal. And the Levitical code, Leviticus particularly, that talks about avoiding certain animals, it's not because they're just vegans. Those animals are to be avoided. The ones that were to be avoided were avoided for religious reasons. Almost certainly to talk about differences of purity. They were metaphorical ways to stay away from animals that seemed to blend the lines together. You stay away from animals that blended. Anyway, that's a long story. But anyway, there was religious reasons. But Christians today aren't bound by them anyway. Even if you go by the Levitical codes, Christians are not supposed to live under the law of Leviticus. That's a basic assumption of the early church. So we have explicit commandments. So Jesus and the disciples did it. We have basically every single Jewish author I know of at all that does it in the Bible. We are commanded to eat meat. Humans are not like animals. We're not eating our peers. This is a very big concept. This is a basic concept of Christianity, that we are made in the image of God. Animals are not. They are beneath us. All animals are beneath us. And I know very much, I see the news, and there's been people who fight for rights for apes and chimpanzees and dolphins, and people should be put on trial if you kill them, because they should be given full legal rights under a legal code. People argue for that. And I think some countries even start to implement some of those codes. That is completely un-Christian. In a Christian worldview, that's just not true. No Jew, no Christian in the history of ever would ever say that we're on the same par. We are not on the same par. Now, if Christianity is false, then they might be onto something. We're just all evolved animals, and we all just treat each other very nice or something. But we're not all just evolved animals. We have human soul, and they don't. We're made in the image of God, and they do not. They're not. So it's just not the same. Also, the Apostle Paul, addresses this issue specifically in Romans chapter 14. And instead of going through, I guess, a long exegesis, you need to go read Romans 14. What's going on in the churches at Rome, or at least some of the house churches, or a house church in Rome, is similar to what's going on to the church at Corinth, but it's a little different as far as we can tell. But what happens, these people are passing judgment on each other because they are eating meat. So, for example, in Romans chapter 14:1, this is from the NET Bible translation. Now receive the one who is weak in the faith, and do not have disputes over differing opinions. One person believes in eating everything, but the weak person eats only vegetables. Think about that. The weak person eats only vegetables. He means weak in the faith. So Paul's saying if someone is weak in the Christian faith if they only eat vegetables. The one who eats everything must not despise the one who does not. the vegetarian or the vegan. And the one who abstains must not judge the one who eats everything, for God has accepted him. God has accepted him, meaning the one who eats everything. And that's a big deal when a Jew says that there are no unclean foods anymore. That's a big deal. And he goes, who are you to pass judgment on another servant? Before his own master he stands or falls, and he will stand, for the Lord is able to make him stand. One person regards one day holier than others. Another regards them all alike. Each must be fully convinced in his own mind. And he talks about people, I mean, some people have, these are holy days in the Jewish calendar. We should obey them. Others say there is no holy day. That's a big deal. He's relegating Shabbat or Sabbath to any old day. And he says the one who observes the day does it for the Lord. The one who eats for the Lord, because he gives thanks to God. And the one who abstains from eating abstains for the Lord, and he gives thanks to God. For none of us lives for himself, none of us dies for himself. And he goes on for a long time, and he says, verse 10, But you who eat vegetables only, why do you judge your brother or sister? And you who eat everything, why do you despise your brother or sister? For we will all stand before the judgment seat of God. And he goes on for a while, not to pass judgment, not to pass judgment, on and on and on and on. And now in verse 14 it says, I know and am convinced in the Lord Jesus that there is nothing unclean in itself. Still, it is unclean to the one who considers it unclean. If your brother or sister is distressed because of what you eat, you are no longer walking in love. Do not destroy by your food someone for whom Christ died. And he goes on for a long time about that even more. And he goes on about the strong helping the weak, helping them. And at the end of the whole thing, which is, I love this last little bit. In verse 21, he says, It is good not to eat meat or drink wine or to do anything that causes your brother to stumble. So it seems to me that, and he says more things there, go read Romans 14 for yourself, I hope. It seems to me that's the same kind of principle at work. If I'm with a person who's a vegan or a vegetarian, whatever, they're fruitarian. If I'm having a meal with them and they think by my eating meat, somehow it's a terrible sin, Paul says that person who thinks it's a terrible sin or something is unclean to eat is weak in the faith. They're a baby Christian. And if you're strong in the faith, he means if you understand the truth, which is there's no such thing as unclean food, well, you should be merciful. Be merciful for the one who's weak in the faith. And don't do something that causes them to think they are sinning. So if I'm with a person and they come to my house and I offer them steak and they go, I'm sorry, I can eat steak. And I go, get over it. You need to grow up. You need to offer steak. And then they'll say, I'm sorry, I feel so guilty by doing it. I feel like I'm sinning. I feel like... Now, I might have a conversation, if they want to have a conversation, because I feel no compulsion to change everyone's mind and quote unquote fix them. I have no compulsion to do that. So if they want to have that view, they can have the view. If they want to talk about later about my theology and meat, we'll talk about it. But if not, I want to say, okay, don't eat steak. I mean, okay, I disagree with their conclusion, and I would side with the Apostle Paul to say it seems to me that they are weaker in the faith. That is, they don't fully understand that that you're not doing anything sinful by eating a piece of steak or God's favorite bacon. I mean, it's just, anyway, that's kind of a joke, but not really, because bacon's awesome. That's all. Those are my thoughts on that, man. Very quickly, sorry, it may not have been worth your time, but I take it seriously. I go back to Jesus, who ate fish and other stuff, and ate other animals. They ate lamb. They just ate, Jesus' disciples ate meat, period. And then what about the animals who were treated today and they're hurt and they're killed? Well, they are. Chickens were killed to give me chicken nuggets. They are killed. They're right. Just like Jesus and disciples killed fish. That's exactly right. And I eat fish sticks right now, and I eat fish all the time because it's cheap and it's wonderful protein and it's lean. But those fish died for me. They were sacrificed on the altar of Walmart for me. And I don't feel guilty about that. Why? Because I made the image of God, and I can use them to live and survive, because we're not all the same, and I can use animals in which I use animals. Should we do it because we're just enjoying watching animals suffer? No, of course not. No, I mean, really, no, we shouldn't do it because we're love to watch animals suffer and so forth. And typically if someone says, well, I've seen those videos where they, ripping the heads off of chickens, and well, yeah, they do. That's how we get the chickens to die. I mean, I don't know. They say, well, there should be a better humane way to kill the animal. Now think about that for a second. The adjective humane, of course, just means related to being human. we should have a humane way to kill them, meaning we should kill them in a way that is appropriate for a human to be killed. The reason why we came up with the adjective humane is because we're saying we should treat the animal as if the animal is human. Well, first off, that assumes humans are, in fact, better than. They're superior than animals. That's why we came up with a word for that. You need to treat them as if they are at the level of a human. Well, they're not at the level of a human. They're not at the level of a human. They're just not. We'll do it the humane way. No, they're not humans. First off, humans, anyway, that's it. I'm not talking about capital punishment, but they're not humans. I don't care about killing them like humans because there's no human way to kill a chicken or a fish or a pig. You kill them. What's the most efficient way to do it? My own view, I think as a Christian, I think we should not indulge in torture of anything, not putting magnifying lenses on ants or anything, which means I don't want to. I hope and pray that people who grow chickens for me don't do it because they love to see chickens' heads ripped off. And yeah, it's my favorite part. You need to go to a counselor. That's a therapist. And other people say, what about veganism is good because animals are going to run out or because it's not good for the environment and whatever. And I hear those arguments as well. And those are very different arguments. Now we're talking about a consequentialist ethic, which is in the end, it's better for the environment and so forth. My response is maybe I'm a little ignorant about how chickens and fish and whatever affects the environment on a mass scale. What I do know is, I do know that people who fight really hard for veganism, vegetarianism, and fruitarianism, whatever, if they say has to be this way, and if you're not human, you're not Christian, you don't do it. If you really enacted that, you've just, metaphorically signed the death warrant on billions of people around the globe. You really have. There are a lot of people on the globe, that's all they said. They need animals to live because they can't grow certain crops and so forth. And so it's an unhealthy and dangerous thing to tell people they have to stop doing X no matter what. And unless it is an inherently evil or immoral thing. And I do not think at all this is an inherently evil or immoral thing. Should Christians try their best for health reasons? Maybe. Sure. Okay. But those are health reasons. Now we're talking about healthy issues, not moral issues, not Christian issues. And that, to me, it's a different subject. I can talk about that all day long. I want a person to tell me maybe it's healthier not to eat so much bacon for my heart or my brain. Fine. I can be persuaded of that. And if a person says, I don't eat meat because it increases my cholesterol, I don't eat bacon because it increases I'll say, great. Cool. If a person says, I don't eat meat because I feel very guilty, I go, great, okay. If a person says, I don't eat meat and you shouldn't either because you're not Christian, you're violating the teaching of Jesus, you're violating the teaching of the New Testament, then I go, I completely disagree with you. Your conscience might tell you that, but I don't find anything ever said about that persuasive. And then I go back to the reason I just said. I say as kindly as I can. I'm just saying that I just don't find that persuasive. Quick thoughts, brother. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the question. Thanks for being patient. Now you're even that much older because that took so long. God bless. Bye-bye. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. @Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, Dr. D. Pendergrass, or @Glimpse the King, @Glimpse the King. And I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcast, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.